I'm here with
Tony Pritchard. I'm the course leader for Postgraduate Certificate and Diploma Design for Visual Communication at London College of Communication.
What are your aspirations for your courses?
Okay, we've been going for something like 12 years, and when we began the course, it was designed partly by the MA, so they could refer interesting candidates back to us that they didn't feel were quite ready for an intensive one-year MA, but it was also set up for the short courses to refer people up that had had a taste of the area and wanted to have a more substantial period of study with a recognised qualification. What we didn't realise at that point was the notion of career conversion, that people were coming from very different academic and cultural backgrounds. They might be coming from law or geography or history and or science, and they would find a reason why visual communication was important to them and to their subject discipline. So they might be wanting to convert career to join a design consultancy, or they might be wanting to take it back into their own subject discipline, and this notion of what's called graphicacy, that should sit alongside numeracy and literacy, started really to take a hold with the idea of the course, or what some people now call STEAM, which is an extension of the STEM subject to include the A for art. I think our course is kind of exemplary in that sort of area of the use of visual communication in different ways. So, we've had someone from the UK government's Home Office study on the course to pick up the visual communication skills to take back into government, and they've set up a policy unit. They're dealing with their digital information services, so they want to make information data accessible to the public, so they can hold public bodies accountable. We've had a professor of law that realises that law is a very complex area, and they feel visual communication is part of a solution to explaining that, and she's been using design methods in her PhD teaching at University of Kent. So we hadn't really anticipated those aspirations. They've kind of grown over the years, and I guess that is where we see our kind of main focus, and in continuing to interview people. People are interested in things like data visualization, information design. This morning I was interviewing someone with an economics background. There's a very obvious connection between data, information and visually communicating that.
Yes, indeed. And you have students from all around the world as well, don't you?
Yeah, we began with the part-time postgraduate certificate. It was a small cohort to begin with 12 years ago. That could only ever be home EU, but very quickly it became apparent that there was an international audience. And what I've said, and we've mapped this as one of our icebreaker activities, is to map where people come from. And I've said that we have students from Canada to Russia and all the countries in between, so it's a real eclectic mix of different subjects but also different kind of cultural backgrounds, and this allows people to develop projects that are language based. So we've just recently had one student produce something called Play Chinese, which is a kind of a visual play aspect to learning Chinese. So what I learned from that student from China was that most Chinese characters are made from 1 to 8 strokes, typed strokes, and it's a tonal language of 4 tones. And in a visual toy form, it really engages you. We should be assessing the project, we're actually playing the project, and that's kind of indicative, I think, of success of the project. We also, for the first time this year, because of the change of start, the course started moved to a September-October start from a January start. We were able to enter the International Society of Typographic Designers student assessment, which is assessment to recruit new members to that typographic specialism. And it was a Chinese student, Chia Lin, who actually got the top mark that year. So he got the top mark, and he won the Vincent Steer Award in his second language. So this is really interesting. I would question whether I or any English as a first language speaker could actually design in a different language system, understand what you've done, and for it to be correct. So that is a very special achievement for those students. So in this year's cohort that's just left, I think there was only 2 English as a first language speakers. I think everyone else, we did a little info project, a data collection project, and most people speak between 2 to 4 languages on the course. It's only the English language speakers, which includes the tutors that speak one language.
Right.
So yes, it's very much a international cohort, which allows for some really interesting kind of crossovers and projects that emerge.
Right. Thank you. That's excellent. And how does the course design support the aspirations that you've described to us, and the aspirations you have for the course?
It's probably a little old school, but we believe in revisiting the basic principles of design. So we look at research methods, design, visual research methods. I think unlike undergraduate courses, postgraduate tend to teach or integrate theory and practice together within the studio. So we are covering research methods, related theories, contextual studies, that's historical and contemporary contexts, as well as the practical principles of making. So we'll go back and we'll look at colour, relook at colour again, we'll look at visual language and grammar, we'll look at structure and navigation, we'll look at information design, and probably first and foremost typography and language. And that is, it's been described by, I think it was Tim Malloy, who was head of exhibition design at the Science Museum, as a foundation course for postgraduate study. But I think by going back to those basic principles, when you've got to deal with complex tasks, which is more often than not in information design, it doesn't become such an arduous task to deal with. So it might look like we're doing complex things, but a basic understanding of design principles allows us to deal with that task better.
Okay, excellent. And what role does the digital play in all of this?
Okay, I mean, in terms of production on the course, one can't deny that Adobe, Creative Cloud and the key programs, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, probably more so now, maybe Muse if people are looking at website design, but also After Effects for moving image. But the great thing with London College of Communication and its foresight was it held on to its analogue facilities. So I think in 2016, that idea that you can combine analog with digital is a real strength. It's kind of a grown-up approach, not to ditch all the older technologies and just keep on chasing the new technologies. Yeah. For example, letterpress to most students is a new technology because they won't have done it. They're probably used to Adobe Creative Suite, Creative Cloud, but they won't be so used to that. And the ability to combine the two appropriately, maybe the warmth of analog with the convenience of the digital. So in terms of the making and finalising of projects for assessment, that would that would be how we use the digital.
Okay.
But if you're talking also digital being online, would that be worth going into?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Then I'm a firm believer that you aren't constrained by the four walls of the traditional studio, and that one should engage carefully with social media such as Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, these kind of means of communicating what we do to the outside world, and that allows us to connect to people in America, in Australia, again from different subject backgrounds, and makes the world a smaller place in communicating what it is we do. I also encourage students to take part in the Design Museum's Font Sunday.
Okay.
Design Museum has something like 3 million followers, which is significant. If you are retweeted as one of their Font Sundays, you get noticed. I also think it's a really good, it's a hashtag Font Sunday. I think it's a really good way of, and a fun, engaging way of developing your research skills, because you're not notified that far in advance. Maybe it's Saturday evening, Sunday morning. They'll tell you what the theme is. You might think, I don't know anything about that. That's great, because it's going to test your ability to research primarily online and primarily visually, to find examples and to share those examples within a limited period of time. It starts at 12 noon, and you get going. And it's collaborative, because you're working with people will come online from America around about 2 o'clock. You see what they're posting, you respond to that. It gets you going in lots of different directions, so you may not think you've got an idea about a particular subject, but it inspires you to kind of look a bit deeper. There is a competitive element to it, because you want to see what someone's done and then do better. And it kind of generally ends about 4 hours later, at 6 o'clock. So I think those, it might not be seen as a serious research method, but I think it's good that you can respond to something you don't know much about, and within a few hours you know a lot more about it, and you've actually helped generate a gallery for the Design Museum's Pinterest site.
Yes, brilliant. And that gallery is available, is it, from the start of the next week, is it? Or is it
it's available from Monday after, right. So they do it very, very quickly, and there's hundreds of type-related galleries. So if you are into, we hope, if you're studying visual communication, you're into typography, and sort of those closely related areas, you've got an amazing resource there that is being put together with people around the world, and also there's plenty of issue-based sites as well beyond Design Museum. So our cohort has grown to being quite a largely female participation, between 70% up to 95% in a couple of years, and things like the Women's Design and Research Unit that our own Sean Cook co-curates with Teal Triggs. I can't remember all the sites. There's one that Ruth Sykes runs for, I think it's British women designers. There's a site in Women of Graphic Design in the States, which a lot of our students that may be developing major projects based around gender inequality, gender issues. It's useful for them to maybe then connect to those online resources to share information.
Fantastic. What other digital teaching and learning spaces do you actually use? I mean, you mentioned some things I think earlier, and also things that the students use as well, and sometimes they're the same area and sometimes they're not. Yeah,
well, there's a couple of things, I guess. Maybe referring to, say, Facebook or to blogs, that sort of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
The students don't seek permission. They just set up a Facebook site.
Yeah.
Quite often that's a social thing for them, but it's become apparent it's very functional and quick.
Yes.
So when we were putting together things like the show reel and the publication, in order to, when images weren't right, when the text wasn't right, this can be a nightmare when you put a publication together. You send emails out, people miss them, goes to junk mail, but students were responding within minutes of requests for updating text and images for the publication. We put the publication and the show reel out. We've done for the last 4 years. The publication, once we've launched it, if people can't come here geographically, we can either post it to them or we can make it available through Issuu, ISSUU, and we've got 4 of those. So that makes that kind of sharing of information digitally, visual information, much easier. We're using Vimeo for show reels as well. So just having those links, if people want to know more about the course or we want to promote the course, then having those links that we can share is useful. One other thing that I did a few years back when the students were picking up their work at the end of the year was to film interviews with the students on what their advice would be for the next cohort. So if they've studied a year, they know the pitfalls, and they can give advice. So we made a film of those interviews. So to anyone that's coming onto the course, asking those frequently asked questions, it's useful to have that filmed set of interviews. I think that's available on YouTube for them to actually hear it from the people that have done the course.
Excellent.
And also with the template websites such as, say, Cargo Collective, there's plenty of others. Having those links makes it easier to, for example, if someone's saying, what's the difference between studying part-time or full-time? Or is there going to be a different kind of quality end result? I can send maybe 3 links to part-time students' websites, graduate websites, and say 3 links to full-time graduate websites. And obviously websites will have contact emails, phone numbers. They contact those people, they can look at what's been produced, satisfy themselves on the quality and whether it's right for them, and they can anonymously find out about the course. So we have to believe in our course because the message is out there, and we hope it's a kind of positive message. So that's we're using Facebook, we're using Issuu, we're using Vimeo, YouTube, whatever the most appropriate media to get the messages out there.
Okay, excellent. Do you also use my blog.arts?
Yes, we have done that for quite a few years with your help, John, which has got easier over the years in setting that up. What we wanted originally a few years back, we have traditional sketchbooks, and we thought, well, what is the digital sketchbook? For example, that's not my phrase. I think that's probably Vanessa Price or Susanna Reese's phrase, so that you could have a digital sketchbook, a place where you could write and reflect, and having a place where you can do that. If you're writing like a diary, it might seem informal, more personal, but you're building up. If you've got to write a reflective piece for the assessment, then you've started to build up that writing by just doing it as an ongoing basis. This was a technique I picked up from, I've forgotten the rename, but CILTAD. What's the new name for CILTAD?
Teaching and Learning Exchange.
Excellent, just testing you there. That I remember when I did my PG Cert teaching qualification, that sort of thing of, could you write 100, read this chapter, write 100 words. Read this chapter, write 100 words. Once you've done that 10 times, you've got 1,000 words that can be edited. So this kind of idea of building the word count up in that way, particularly when it is reflective, when you're asking people to be reflective on their work, for a reflective practitioner. So we suggested that they have individual blogs that they manage themselves, but we also decided to take advantage of a WordPress group blog, keep it very basic, which allowed us to put web links on there, which we picked up over the years, so we don't have to keep repeating that. That's online there. We could put links to student blogs. We could put links to student websites as they develop them, which is really good because when they leave and if we don't have access, easy access, then at least we've got a set of links they've left behind for us. And the blogs being visual and reflective meant we can post images, students can post images, they can discuss images, we can interject. What we're trying to avoid is that it's like an online tutorial. It shouldn't really be seen as that. Occasionally what we did was follow up on a practical workshop. If we've mentioned contextual references, then maybe after the session we've put some links, put some images to what we were talking about. But it should really be owned by the students as a kind of way to keep discussing things online, particularly good maybe for part-time students who can't be in more than say one day a week. And hopefully they can make it in more often to access the facilities, libraries, technical workshops, etc. But part-time can be a little bit a bit more isolated unless they've got some online facility to share work on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. What other benefits have come from taking the approach that you're describing, or also what difficulties might you have had along the way? What sort of issues might have cropped up?
I suppose the hours, when the teaching hours are kind of indicated in handbooks, and that's specifically face to face. If you have an enthusiasm for online, it can become a little bit more 24/7.
Yeah, definitely.
Going way back, I can't even remember what CILTAD or the technical wing of CILTAD was really going way back. But there was Imageboard was innovated by the university for Blackboard, and that was the first inkling of. And we forget how quick and how recent all of this is. That was quite radical. I mean, nowadays people say, "What, you limited the image size? What are you guys doing?"
Yeah.
But it began to. The students loved it. I mean, you can tell when something's working. But it then began to lead to this. Hey, I posted 6 o'clock Saturday evening, and now it's 8 o'clock, and you still haven't responded. You have to say, well, it is Saturday, so actually putting some parameters. Maybe you don't want to run a course via email and attachments, or it needs to be clear that maybe it's a 48-hour turnaround. But I mean, online is particularly addictive because it's immediate and it can be 24/7, and you can see what time students are working to. They're working very, very late through the night often by some of the posts and the times that you see when they're posting. So managing one's life so it's not purely online, getting the balance between online and offline, I think is where all of us need to pay some attention.
Yeah, no, very good point.
But you were saying about positives?
Yes. Other benefits that may have come for the course and for the students.
I think promotion of the course in an international context via social media. We're getting people in Australia that are doing student profiles. If they're impressed by the work, they can connect to the work. Then there's a sort of connection. Strange enough, it's almost like we're getting now recruiting through things like Twitter. I know if you don't follow Twitter, then you're probably missing a few job opportunities that are coming about. But equally, because I make it known that via social media that the courses exist, then people are looking at the images that are posted. If they like it, what they're looking at, and they understand it, then we're starting to get some approaches from the UK and around the world. So it helps us kind of connect, makes it a small world, helps us connect. We got invited down to the Design Museum's celebration of 50 years of British road signs, where you're meeting people that you meet online. Again, one is to take care there, but I think design museums a fairly safe
Yeah.
group of people, but it's pretty unusual to be, that as being a method by which you start to connect, rather than just locally to the LCC. Again, I'm trying to remember the university's medium-term strategy, which is connect, communicate, and another C word, collaborate. Connect, communicate, collaborate as the medium-term strategy. There, I've got no resources to check what that was. But I think things like social media, online, digital, help to extend all of those kind of key themes to college, university, and what we do as a practice.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Do you have any other thoughts or reflections you'd like to share about this? I mean, for example, what would be your dream approach if nothing was holding you back, you had no constraints at all on this? Other directions you'd like to go in with this?
I think we're learning as we go. I mean, it's still relatively sort of recent. I guess people are mentioning new stuff like Snapchat. We keep an eye out for and test. The things like Pinterest and Instagram, and that kind of connection abroad. I think recently there was a Brian Levitt from Portland, and she's making a film on design production, I believe, and she was over here visiting the show. So I think that connecting to people around the world, and obviously it'd be nice not for it to be purely online, but to actually one day go out there and visit in person to different institutions. I think that would be pretty ideal, in that we have been making connections around the world, and through our students as well, as I say, from Canada to Russia, all countries in between. You feel a lot more connected. I can't predict the future and where we might be sort of going with this. We've changed the start of the year from January to September, October, and that's given us a decent amount of time between June, when the term finishes, and October to, for the first time, really have a good few months to analyse exactly what we're doing, and to look at the way that we use information repositories such as Moodle and the blogs and social media, to review what we've done, and maybe to preview how we can extend this and what we can do in the future that's a little fresh, a little different.
Thank you. And you mentioned a lot of resources there in the course of this conversation. What I'd like to do, if I may, is get the links to those from you and include them in the blog posting we do.
Absolutely, they're probably the best way to elucidate what we do, beyond kind of verbal conversations.
Okay. Excellent. Tony Pritchard, many thanks.
Thank you, John.